Gators Breakdown, because there's never a dull moment in Gator Nation.
The Gators Breakdown podcast is ready to go. I'm your host, David Waters. You can find me on social media at GatorDave_SEC. Coming at you bi-week Monday night, couple days after Florida falls to Miami, with co-host Will Miles. You can find him at Will Miles SEC. Read his work at readandreaction.com. Oh, Will, here we are again. 1-3 at the bye week now here for the Gators. Kind of somber Mondays is what these have been the last few weeks. I was kind of joking around with you before we came on here. I've got a terrible headache, so who knows how this episode will go. But we will get through it because, hey, I put out there, no press conferences or anything today because of the bye week. So it was with everything going on, a great time to kind of do a Q&A with our audience out there. So many questions sent through Twitter. We'll get to as many as we can. Obviously, we can save some for next Monday as well. So that'll kind of be the theme of the episode. But we'll also get into the news of DJ Lagway in a boot again. And the SEC annual opponents have been revealed, kind of leaked the day early. I'm sure ESPN, SEC Network, not too happy about that. Former employee Chris Lowe breaking the news. We will get the full schedule for the next 4 years on Tuesday, but we have learned the annual opponents for Florida. So, Will, plenty to get into, even with the bye week right here.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think never a dull moment. I'm not sure a press conference would have gone all that well for Billy Napier today. So maybe it's a good thing that he's got a week to sort of gather himself and figure out what he's going to say. And it was a rough one, man. I wrote this week, I've never been as depressed as I was during the first half of that game against Miami, where it was just every single thing that was promised and hyped. And I mean, I include myself in some of that hype, and it all just came crashing down in that first half. And, even still, they get the touchdown drive to open the second half, get the interception from Kamani McLean, and they pulled me right back in. And then they kicked me in the nuts again right afterwards, which is sort of par for the course in the Billy Napier era. So, it's funny, like, the people who are watching this understand, right, is that It's not apathy, it's self-loathing. It's that last week I was sitting there going, just that little spot. I even said it. I was like, I'm going to hate myself for saying it. But there's this little thing just in the back of my head saying, well, maybe they can get it done against Miami. So you tune in hoping that they will, and then that's the slop that we see. And it's depressing, man, because, like, I can remember talking about the Mullen era and being like, he's not going to win a national championship, but I understand why people make the argument. And, he's not recruiting at the level he needs to, but this is an experiment to see if he can sort of like scheme his way around it. And I think, you and I both agree that it was the right move given where Florida wants to be long-term. But, man, did they pick the wrong guy on the back end in order to get – look, I mean, I was excited about Billy Napier. This is just one of those things where you never know. And 4 years in, or 3 years and 4 games in, we know. And, even if they run the table at this point, which is, like, exceedingly unlikely, but even if they run the table, I think you still struggle to get into the playoff picture. And like just a rough 2025, just like it was a rough 2024, just like it was an even rougher 2023, and a rough 2022, a rough 2021, a rough 2020 since the shoe toss. It's like, I blame Marco Wilson. That's really what this comes down.
Hasn't been the same since. Everybody hit that like button. Really, getting into it right here. So like the work that we're doing here. I know you don't like the Gators being 1-3, and, maybe there's to be some changes along the way in the next few weeks, but we will see. But hit that like button for the work we're doing right here on Gators Breakdown. Comment section. Thanks for the comments in there right now as well. Subscribe right here on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform as well. So, let's get into a little bit of news first. And we'll get to Lagway in a boot. Gators Online putting out their quote, Florida starting quarterback DJ Lagway is in a boot. Lagway is now nursing some soreness in his foot that he sustained against Miami, according to a source. Gators Online confirmed with multiple sources that Lagway was in a boot on Monday. Quote, just precautionary, a source close to Lagway told Gators Online his foot got stepped on against Miami and he felt some foot soreness. So, of course, I asked around a little bit and have been told it's not that serious. Certainly the plan is to be back versus Texas. But certainly begs the question, what's next with DJ Lagway. So before we extend this conversation, Will, and I think I'll play the soundbite from DJ Lagway after the Miami game because he talks about, his performance there in that game being disappointing, getting things together during the bye week. It's going to be even tougher now, it looks like, with him in a boot. And also, somewhat of a guarantee from DJ Lagway.
I didn't play my best ball today. I took what the defense gave me. I didn't make a lot of plays that I needed to make, to stand out of the game. I kind of just managed it. I didn't make a lot of big plays, so I'm trying to find out the balance between both, and still just develop and trying to continue to get better.
Is it a good time for a bye week? I mean, you guys just had a tough couple of road games and a lot of physical toll.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely say it's a good time just mentally, just to kind of rally the troops, just kind of get together, and just compete and just work on our craft. We haven't really had a lot of time as a whole offense together, everybody healthy, just to work on our craft together, all together as a group. So it should be good just this week, next week, just to get together, work on our things, work on things that we need to fix and stuff like that.
Last year, the bye week really paid off for you guys.
For sure, yes, sir.
So how do you kind of recreate that magic again?
We got to compete each and every day during practice, having competition drills and stuff like that, and it's going to be a fun environment. We got to continue to get better offensively.
Just knowing that you're one of the leaders of this team, just how motivated do you feel to make sure that this team sticks together through the bye week, doesn't let this splinter fracture you guys?
Yeah, for sure. That's my biggest thing right now, keeping all the guys together, and just we got to all stay together. We got to compete together. We got to do a lot of things together, and we're going to get this fixed for sure.
How do you think you've handled this adversity, DJ? Because, obviously Gatorade Player of the Year, you're 6-1 as a starter last year. Handling, kind of these games on each other.
It's been hard, though, but let me tell y'all something. We're going to get things changed for sure. I guarantee that. I can guarantee that this is not acceptable at all. I'm not going to sit here and lie to y'all and make this seem like this is okay. This isn't okay. We got to play better football, and it starts with me.
Starts with him, Will, and I've seen it in the comment section. I've talking to my parents, talking to Gator Nation out there, and right there at the end is about as much fire as DJ Lagway has shown. when you look at how he is on the field and kind of just, I'm sure he's shocked about how he's playing, and I think that has a lot to do with it. But kind of throwing a guarantee out there. We'll see what it means down the road, of course. But then, also the middle part of that was, hey, yeah, it'd be good for a bye week. It'd be good for us to get together. It'd be good for us to try to figure things out. And then we get the word that he's in a boot again. So it was like, yeah, we're going to get these reps. And these reps are going to go count for something. Well, how much is he going to rep this week then if he's in a boot right now? Maybe, I told it wasn't serious. I don't know what that means as far as a practice schedule. They weren't going to practice that much this week anyway, and trying to get healthy. But now you have to deal with this again. So it's going to be a lighter week, but who knows what the reps are going to look like. But it's just another issue that we have to chronicle here with DJ Lagway and injuries, but certainly, with the what he was talking about there of get together and try and figure some things out during the bye week, that might be put on hold a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I don't know, man. Like, I don't have any answers for what Napier's done to the guy. Like, he just doesn't even look remotely like the quarterback that he was last year, even close, right? And in some ways, it's like he was freelancing last year, and now that they've made him work within the confines of this offense, we're finding that the offense sucks, and and that working within those confines really isn't the best thing to do, I guess. I do not believe that the lack of continuity and the lack of reps during the offseason have led DJ Lagway to forget how to play the position. And so the last 4 weeks that we've seen, I think, is indicative of what Florida has taught him to do. And that's a problem because he's the second worst quarterback in the SEC, only in front of Zach Calzada. And Calzada's out with a shoulder injury right now. And so DJ Lagway is the worst quarterback in the conference is how it stands right now in just about any metric you look at, whether it's quarterback rating, yards above replacement, PFF rating, any of those sorts of things. He's at the bottom. So he's not making good decisions. It's not explosive and he's not efficient. I'm like, great. Like, it's bad. And so you can say, hey, we're going to turn this around. You can say all those things, right? But it's just like with Billy Napier when he gets up there, as Kempo says, with his jazz hands and starts talking about, starts talking about, the opposition and how good they are and, how it's a challenge and all that sort of stuff. It's like at some point, we talked all offseason about these guys needing to dictate to the defense what they were going to do.
You read my mind.
And Miami just took them behind the woodshed. And nobody on the offensive line could block. I didn't know you could get a 0 rating for pass blocking on PFF. Like, PFF is supposed to, like it's almost impossible to get a 0 pass blocking. I think Florida had, 2 guys who were 0 pass blocking. Yeah. So, it's not just Lagway. Like, there's a lot of stuff going wrong. But I'll believe it when I see it, right? This is one of those where I had that little hope at the back of my head things were going to turn around against Miami. I'm like, hey, maybe this will be closer than I think. Maybe it'll just be Napier again who'll screw up clock management. He did take a bunch of timeouts he didn't need to at the end. So I was ready for that to be the kick in the balls that I got. But I mean, it's like he didn't even get a chance.
Put a couple on when you watch Florida football.
Like, the team wasn't good enough for Napier to kick me in the nuts, and that's sort of the indicative of the overall experience, man. Like
going to your point,
he threw for 60 yards.
Yeah. Going to your point, that brings up something else. As I was listening to that press conference, they asked Lagway about the trying to go deep, using the deep ball, and we got the take what the defense gives us.
Oh. Well,
and here's the thing. Goes back to the point where you just brought it up again, too, and I bring it up all the time. Dictate, don't be dictated.
Well, they like running. So Bud Davis, he's a great follow, at @JBudDavis on Twitter. Yep. He always breaks down Florida's tendencies. And for 4 years now, Florida has just run almost exclusively out of the pistol. And you see them in that formation and you know what's coming. You know they're running the ball. They did actually run a couple of play actions early in the game.
Yep.
Now, the play actions they ran early in the game were almost exclusively on first down because Billy Napier, if he misses on first down, then wants to run to get into third manageable. But 3rd and 6 right now is like an impossible task for this offense. And so it was 3 and out every time they decided to do that. Now, the first drive, they actually came out and ran the first 2 plays and didn't get anywhere, and then lost a yard on the 3rd play too. But so my biggest contention, my biggest just bone to pick with Napier actually isn't really the offensive design, though I think there's room for improvement there. My biggest bone to pick with Billy Napier is that on 3rd and 1, they're gonna run an inside handoff. Like, that's it. Because his goal is not to win the game. His goal is to get the first down. And 3rd and 1, 2nd and 1, 2nd and 2, 3rd and 2, that's when you run the play action and the defense is firing up and you get guys available downfield. Like, there were not that many opportunities, but there were a few. And the last drive of the game, the
last meaningful drive.
The last meaningful drive. They're down 13-7. He runs the ball twice. They started running the ball outside, and that actually started to get a little.
Is this after the interception?
So after the interception, they went 3 and out on that one.
Yeah.
But then they got a punt.
Okay. I just didn't know which one you were talking about there. Okay.
Yeah. So then they got a punt back, and they ran Jaden Baugh for 4 yards off tackle. Then they ran a pitch to Baugh, and he got 5 yards. So now you're sitting 3rd and 1. And on that 3rd and 1, we know what's coming. It's an inside run. Safety for Miami fires up, hits him a yard in the backfield. It's 4th and 2, and they decide to punt. And that was the ball game. They punted to Miami, and then Miami on the next drive ran the ball like 10 of 11 plays and punched it in the end zone. Basically, Florida's defense was gassed at that point. But the thing is like, so I know that Lagway hasn't played well. I get that. Not making any excuses for the kid. But if he's going to be in the game on 2nd and 1 and 3rd and 1, you got to put the ball in his hands. Like, that's an opportunity where you can go against tendency, where you can play action fake, you can roll him out, you can get in the pistol on 3rd and 1, and everyone's going to go, here comes the run, because when Napier gets them in the pistol, it's like 70%, 75% run plays. So that's where you fake the run, everybody fires up, you roll the guy out, you give him 3 options with the flood, and he just picks one and throws it. Look, if you can't complete a pass on 3rd and 1 when the defense is giving you the pass because they're running up to stop it, then it's a worthless cause, right? And it's the last 3 games. USF, they did the same thing. Every time they got to 2nd and 1, it was, well, we better get the first down to sort of get the drive going, or to maintain the drive. Well, you know what happens when you do that? You kick a bunch of field goals. And so that's how you lose to USF. And then against LSU, it was the same thing. Like, they couldn't get anything going offensively. They got in a lot of, I think it was like 6 or 7 situations where they were in 2nd and short or 3rd and short. And every single time it was that same running play or a read option where Lagway came around the corner for 2 yards. And, the other thing is they had 2 very, I wouldn't say nice design calls, but calls we haven't seen this year yet, right? One on the speed option with Lagway, and one where Lagway had it on a QB draw up the middle on the touchdown drive. Never went back to that the entire rest of the second half either. So, I mean, I
even an under center with a 240-pound quarterback on 3rd and 1. Can we just, wow. Do that? I mean, can that be an option?
So there's actually rising academic literature right now that suggests that going from the shotgun on short yardage is stupid. That when you're under center, you're much more effective on those sorts of things. But that actually, so Dave, this is the problem, right? Is that suggests that they would have practiced that. Like, you can't execute it if you haven't practiced. I remember years ago where
practice it.
I mean, you got 2 weeks now, so maybe you should do it. So you didn't show it in the press conference, but one of the things that Lagway sort of said during that promise was like, he didn't say it. I don't remember the exact quote, but it was sort of like, we're done playing, or playtime is over, or something like that. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? We've been doing for 4 weeks. Like, why did it take 4 weeks to get to a point where everybody's angry enough to say, no, this isn't acceptable?
Well, hasn't that been my narrative for the last 3 weeks?
God, it's been your narrative for the last 3 years.
Well, that's true.
Where it's like, why does it take 4 weeks for this team to get going? It's because Billy Napier is like an old man sliding into the bath, and I should have known better. I should have known better when I was writing about the team. So, we're going to put out a preseason magazine for wherever Napier goes next year, and it's just going to be hate watching whoever that team is. And, hopefully the Florida fans enjoy that.
Okay, there we go. We'll get into some more quarterback talk, of course, too, because of all these questions that got sent in. So I guess, and hopefully some of these questions kind of just be rapid fire, because we got a good bit sent in, but we got some other things to talk about too. One more injury news here, Will. Dijon Johnson, surgery. 24/7 Sports' Graham Hall first reported that Johnson is undergoing surgery today on Monday. His knee injury is, quote, his meniscus rather than his ACL. So probably out for the foreseeable future. Of course, this now means Cormani McClain now has to step up more after playing well so far this season. So Devin Moore, Cormani McClain. Hey, look, I mean, Devin Moore's been healthy so far. So certainly that's got to stay here, or, you start getting some depth concerns at the cornerback spot. But Devin Moore, Cormani, with those two, you're fine. This defense continues to play well. Even given all the injuries, we'll see what happens with the defensive line injuries that suffer, especially like somebody like Brendan Bett against Miami as well. So certainly injury list piling up for the Gators. Bye week comes at a good time. But the big news is Dijon Johnson. Who knows, Will, if we'll see him play again this year. But thankfully, not an ACL and a meniscus, but coming, 4 weeks into a month into the season, that timeline may be iffy if we see him again this year.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's good news that it's not an ACL, but there are different ways to repair menisci, whatever that is. I don't know. But there are different ways to do that repair. And like
Josh Pate would be proud of you, by the way, by saying menisci. Well,
that's good. So that's really all I want is I want to be in Pate State's good graces. So, so I would hope they repair it correctly. Like there's a way to get back quickly, but that one tends to have long-term ramifications, and then there's a way to repair it correctly. Given what we've seen so far, I would hope that they take the more conservative approach and make sure that we've got him back full strength next year. Look, I think Florida's defense played really, really well against Miami, but I actually am less bullish on them than other people are. I think the defense has been the best unit that Florida has had. I think the defense has played well in pockets. I think they played well the entire game against Miami. But I was actually really surprised when I looked at the yards per attempt data coming into this Miami game, and Florida's defense wasn't very good.
Yeah,
like on that specific thing. And you can point to a couple of explosives, and certainly early in the year that skews things. But Florida's like 68th right now, even after playing well against Miami in yards per attempt. And that tends to correlate into points. And so I think they've done a really nice job of keeping opposing teams. Once they get into Florida territory, they've been able to sort of bow up and, even force them to punt a few times, but certainly have made them settle for field goals. That is a skill that's something that the defense did a lot last year too. The difference is that Florida, once Lagway took over, had an offense that could be explosive and could put up a touchdown. And so all of a sudden now you get the offense having to press a little bit and like, I don't think this is going to be a defense that gives up like a boatload of points, but look, I mean, they had an opportunity to stop USF and didn't do it. They had an opportunity in this game against Miami to continue to hold and weren't able to do that either. Now, I'm not saying that the offense isn't at fault for the losses, but I am saying that I think the underlying numbers suggest that if the offense can't get things together, the dam's going to break a little bit on this defense. There's going to be a couple of games where the quarterbacks that they're playing are going to play a little bit better. And with the injuries that they've had on the defensive line, with the injuries that they're starting to see at corner,
and the mental aspect of it.
Yeah, well, that part of it too, but this was always a concern, right? Is that the thing I said all offseason was having these games on the road early was an advantage because you get to play healthy before all the attrition came through. Well, the offense has been so putrid that I think we've got some of the better defensive performances we're going to see all year from this team, and you got nothing to show from it. And so, yes, there's certainly a mental aspect to it, but there's also an aspect of I think they're a good unit. I don't think they're a great unit. And so there's been a lot of talk this week about, well, Florida's defense is going to be able to keep them in all of these games. And, I don't know if that's true. I think at some point typically when you look at it over the course of a year, you might have a 2 or 3 game stretch where your yards per play doesn't match your points per game given up. But once you get through 12 games, those tend to correlate pretty well. And so there's a couple of ugly games coming if Florida isn't able to tighten things down on the defensive side of the ball too, which is a nasty proposition considering what we've seen thus far. But I do think, I did listen to the call-in show that you had yesterday where you had Bill Sykes on, some other people. And I think, Bill's comment was, if they keep these guys, if you want Napier gone, and I think most of us, presume that there's a new coach next year. If you want that, like one of your big concerns is exactly what happened last year, right? Is that after he's essentially already lost all hope, all of a sudden you see this turnaround. And so in some capacity, what I'm saying might be good news. If you're one of those people who wants Napier gone, is I don't think the defense has the underlying stats to be able to hold this up with the offense struggling the way it is. So Florida either has to figure out the offensive side of the ball to win a couple of games where the defense just, isn't able to hold that dam back, or it's going to get ugly real quick, man.
Yeah, for sure. So that's where it is right now. Dijon Johnson, meniscus injury. We'll see if he can get back on the field this fall. So we got some Q&A to get to, as well as talk about the new SEC annual opponents revealed for the Gators. before we get there, look, guys, out there, it is the biggest week of college football. There's no better time to get in on the action than MyBookie. Big week of college football. So many big games. Gators on a bye week. I think the bye week's favored by like 10. But the Gators, not on the field. But so many other big games. It starts Friday night. Florida State, a 7-point favorite at Virginia. Then a big Big 12 game with Arizona State favored 2.5 hosting TCU. And then it continues Saturday with Notre Dame, 5-point favorites at Arkansas. Duke, 5-point favorites at Syracuse. Ole Miss, 2.5-point favorites hosting LSU. Ohio State, 8.5-point favorites on the road at Washington. Penn State hosting Oregon as 3.5-point favorites. And Georgia, a 3-point favorite when Bama comes to Athens. So many big games. Go bet it all at MyBookie, your one-stop sports book and casino in one. You got one account. You got one wallet. Bet football all weekend and spend some time hitting the slots. No switching apps, no jumping platforms. Just get straight into the action. Bet on the NFL, too. They got the game lines, the player props, and more. The NFL Super Contest and Survivor Pools. And look, if you're new to MyBookie, use our promo code Gators for your first bet up to $500, and it's fully covered. Make your play. If it doesn't hit, you get it right back with the bet back bonus. No stress. Just a one-time rollover on the return bet, so you're free to reload and keep firing. So sign up at mybookie.ag with promo code Gators and claim your bet back bonus. Will, so I don't think we'll be able to get into all of the questions I sent you today. So we'll maybe try and split them up a bit between this week, next week. But a popular topic, and we'll lead with this one, timeline. Jed Kill says, or asks, imagine you're Scott Stricklin. Why wait to fire Billy Napier? Is there any benefit to let him continue to run the program? So I discussed that last night. We talked about it on the call-in show that you mentioned a bit, and the redshirt rule comes up, and, guys can, you can still redshirt with 4 games, and with guys, after 4 games, if you fire Billy Napier now, would they decide to, they can still use the redshirt. If they don't want to play any more games because you fired the coach, then, they could sit out the rest of the season from here on out. So that comes up a whole lot. I don't think money's a big part of it. You're not saving a whole bunch of money if you did it right now, then by the end of the season. Money's not really a factor here either. So I can't tell you why. Scott Stricklin says, just if you're telling me to imagine myself as Scott Stricklin, I don't know why. Just besides that, I'm giving Billy Napier every chance for whatever reason to try and dig himself out of this. If you're telling me to be Scott Stricklin, that's probably where it comes from. I don't see much of a benefit, though, if just keeping it going, honestly, Will. I just really don't.
No, I mean, I've been calling for the guy to be fired since Texas A&M last year, so I'm not entirely unbiased on this. I think there's a fan part of me that comes in and is just like, this is miserable. Like, how much do we need to take? At the same time, I would tell you that I felt the exact same way after Texas last year. And so, that's part of, I guess, what maybe Stricklin is thinking is that you give him, right now, Florida doesn't have a non-zero chance of getting to a playoff. If they run the table and they end up 9-3, and Lagway turns things around, and then the narrative comes out after, oh, maybe he was injured or whatever to start with, or look at how they've turned it around. They're really hot or whatever. Like, in some weird, bizarro world where Florida doesn't take 3 timeouts in the second half that it doesn't have in one of these games that are coming up that's close, Florida runs the table and there's still an opportunity to get to where you want to go. But I think, it's funny because I wrote an article maybe 2 years ago where I basically said that Billy Napier's recruiting was Dan Mullen's recruiting. Like, it was the identical thing. And so that's the thing I sort of hang my hat on, is it's not just the in-game coaching, the performance, the 20-22 record, all that stuff. This isn't Ron Zook where the cupboards are full and the results are not matching. This is something where DJ Lagway had to be an elite player to cover the holes that were on the roster. And we knew that. And the reason I was excited coming into this year is that he was that guy in the second half of the year last year. And you looked at it and said, well, if he can be that guy again, then he can cover up a lot of the sins that have happened on the recruiting trail. And I mean, I went back and I looked at those 2007 class, the 2007 class for Kirby Smart, for Nick Saban, the 2017 for Kirby Smart, and you're talking about guys like Jake Fromm, Dante Hightower, DeAndre Swift, Marcel Darius, Mark Barron. Like, those are the guys who came in those bump classes, like guys who were first round NFL draft picks are guys who came in those bump classes. Look, I think Florida's gotten a lot of starters from that 2023 class that they brought in, you know, guys like Jordan Castell and Bryce Thornton and Jacoby Jackson and that sort of stuff. But they don't have anybody who's going in the first round of the NFL draft. And you factor that in with, or you combine that with sort of the struggles that they've had in the trenches on both sides of the ball. And there just isn't the talent to overcome the fact that Lagway's been so bad. So, you know, Napier is the offensive coordinator. He's also the head coach. I do wonder whether that factors in some capacity, right? That if you get rid of him, you're I don't know whether you're forcing your guys to learn a new system, but you're certainly sort of removing two coaches at once when you do that. Now, I think Florida fans would say that's a net positive, but
well, with that, Will,
yeah,
I mean, there's the stats that I shared yesterday. Yeah, it shouldn't matter. Almost every offensive category, Florida's in the hundreds on right now. Yeah, this is counting LIU, but still, doesn't really change the story all that much. Scoring offense 101st in the country. Total offense 110th. Rushing offense 104th. Passing 86. Sacks allowed 108. Tackles for loss allowed 129. Third down conversions 122nd in the country. 10-plus yard plays, 93 of them. Or 46 of them, 93rd in the country. Long plays of 20-plus yards, 101st in the country. 30-plus yards, 131st in the country. 40-plus yards, 121st in the country. It is putrid. And, yeah, who cares if it's a new offense? Is it really going to be much worse than what we're seeing right here?
Well, I mean, you're asking me to defend something that I agree with you on.
Yeah, I know.
So, I mean, I think honestly, if I were to step into Scott Stricklin's shoes, the rationale is like the transfer portal has something to do with it. I think
But on that point, here's the thing, and Michael put that up, and I did want to share that comment. So let me get it back up here, but. Yeah, because I think Stricklin's trying to see how you can keep the players on the roster because the portal opens up for them. It opened up for Virginia Tech players. It opened up for UCLA players as well. They're still on the roster. Yeah, so look, if guys don't want to play, fine. This thing's a lost cause anyway.
So why does Billy Napier still call plays, Dave? Like, why is he still the primary play caller?
Why do I think, or what do I think that he thinks?
Well, I mean, so why do you think he's still the play caller? Like, what is?
I think he generally thinks it's the first of all, he's even admitted it. He likes doing it.
Mm-hmm.
He wants to do it, and he still thinks he's even come out and said when he's been asked, he gets the best pulse of the team when he's the play caller.
So he's delusional, is what you're saying.
In a lot of ways, I think so.
And so I
said
think
last night, if he wants to be an offensive coordinator, you can't be a head coach. He'd rather be an offensive coordinator than a head coach.
Well, he's not even a good offensive coordinator. So it's not like the team is struggling on the defensive side of the ball and is scoring a bunch of points. He's really not padding that resume to go become an offensive coordinator when he's let go from the University of Florida. But the reason I asked the question that way is I think I asked the same question of myself about Scott Stricklin, right? Stricklin hired this guy as the upgrade to Dan Mullen. And I think, we've heard a lot over the last couple of weeks about, well, you guys ran off Dan Mullen. You specifically, I know, have gotten some of that since you asked the question that drove the stake through Mullen's heart. But so put yourself in Stricklin's shoes, right? Like, he's a guy, you don't get to that position without having an ego. He just brought in Todd Golden, and that was his selection. And Golden has been really, really successful with the basketball program, the scandal notwithstanding. And then you sort of combine that with all the other stuff that the AD has to do that has nothing to do with actual sports execution. And, you know, I think the reason that Billy Napier thinks he's the best offensive coordinator for this team is because he has a big ego, because you have to have a big ego to be a head football coach in college football. Like, you know, we all look at it, we go, oh, these guys, they have the greatest gig in the world. They get fired and they get paid $20 million. Well, that's not the way it works, right? Like you've like for traveled, them, yeah. Like you've traveled like on buses all over the place for a big part of your career. Like you had enough confidence in yourself to go work as a graduate assistant and make no money, knowing that at some point, or with confidence in yourself, that at some point you would rise up the ranks and it would be worth it and you would make that kind of money. Athletic director is the same thing. There's only a few guys who get to that level in that position, have that level of influence. And, you know, do you surround yourself with people who tell you the honest truth, or do you surround yourself with people that tell you what you want to hear? And some of that is tied in with your ability to succeed. And so if you were to ask me why Billy Napier's not gone yet, I would say it's because there is still a slight percentage, very, very small, but still a slight percentage that this thing gets turned around. And until that is completely extinguished, until there's no light left in the flame, until it's been doused with water and but put out completely, I don't think that, you know, people who have that sort of ego and who have risen to that level legitimately, I mean, you know, who've done a good job to rise up to that specific level, I think it's hard to let go of that. Like, I don't like admitting I'm wrong. Like with the whole Lagway thing, I'm still sitting here going, oh, God, like he'll turn around at some point. I'm not really wrong. And it's like, at some point I'm just gonna have to go, crap, missed that one. Right. And, you know, sort of the same thing. So, I don't have a great answer because I don't think Billy Napier should still be around. I don't think Billy Napier should have been around in order to see the run last year. I certainly think this year is different because of the Lagway issues that we've seen. But, you know, again, if I go back to like why someone would make that decision, I think for the most part, those decisions come from an unwavering confidence in your ability despite the evidence. And so the offense, I respect Billy Napier's willingness to go down with the ship while calling plays rather than being humble enough to say, you know what, I'm going to bring somebody else in here. And then if they're terrible at it, at least I've got somewhere to deflect the criticism. There's nowhere to deflect the criticism at this point, right? And so, you know, he's got a good friend there in the athletic director's office, and he's going to be given every opportunity. But again, I think one more loss and the flame is in my mind completely extinguished. But, you know, is 7-5 with like a positive direction towards the end good enough for Scott Stricklin? I can't answer that question. So hopefully, I mean, I don't want to root for my team to lose. So right. I refuse to do that. But in some cases, like a 5-7 or a 4-8 forces the hand of people where maybe an 8-5 or an 8-4 or a 7-5 wouldn't.
That is okay. I'm going to skip forward to a question then because you just brought it up. Old Bast, I think he's been in here on YouTube as well. How do I overcome this unhealthy obsession with continuing to watch something that hurts me so? and let's go to your point, Will. It's, you know, I don't necessarily, I'm not going to cheer for the team to lose. And it kind of goes to TD Gator as well, which I know is very polarizing on Twitter, by the way. But a lot of, you know, he's been right about a whole lot of stuff about Billy Napier, and he was pretty early on it. But he goes, if Florida's goal is to win championships, our losses actually wins if that's what leads the powers that be to finally fire Billy Napier. Going to your point, Will, it is hard for me to say, okay, yeah, big picture. Yeah, okay, there's probably some validity to that. But I'm not going to sit in the swamp. I'm not going to sit in front of my TV on away games and go cheer for the orange and blue to lose. I'm always in the mindset, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. Me cheering for my team is not going to have an effect whatsoever on a record, a win, a loss, or a decision on a head coach. So, like you, the fan in me is not going to allow that to happen. I'm not going to sit there and say I can sit there and wish for a loss, because the victory or the victory of firing a head coach and getting the next guy in is there. I can't do it. You won't find that angle for me. I guess the way it's phrased, our losses actually wins. I guess if you phrase it like that, there's some sense in that. And it's not necessarily, and I don't think TD Gator's doing this either, like sitting in the stands and say, every time the opponent makes a good play, and they're cheering for the opponent. I don't think that's the case here either. But I think there is an angle to it that says, if the losses happen, they are actually wins in some ways because it gets you to the next step.
Yeah, I mean, look, so I think both questions are interesting. I think I talk a lot about deposits and withdrawals, and Billy Napier at 20 and 22 has made more withdrawals than he has made deposits. And when you factor out the cupcakes, he's definitely made more withdrawals than he has had deposits. And you factor in the road struggles, and he's made a lot more withdrawals than he has deposits. And so there's not a lot of goodwill, or there's not a lot of grace that's extended his way, for one win or two wins or whatever that might be. I think, saw a sermon years ago that talked about expectations versus reality. And that when you've got expectations and reality doesn't meet it, there's a gap. And then you either fill that gap with suspicion or you fill it with grace. And so combining that with the withdrawals and deposits, to me, we fill it with suspicion at this point that Billy Napier is not the right guy for the job, because he's taken so many deposits, or he's taken so many withdrawals at this point that, the first year you look at it, you go, all right, first year, went 6-7, but good game against Utah, like all that sort of stuff, right? My expectations are it's going to take a while to turn this thing around. But by the time you get to year 4, expectations are we got a playoff ready team, and we don't. And so,
and that goes for any head coach, by the way. I'll repeat. Let me repeat that. That's not a Billy Napier thing.
No,
it is whoever is on the sideline. Whoever's on the sideline. Year 2, I better see some progress. Year 3, year 4, I'm expecting to be in the conversation, especially with an expanded playoff now.
So, I guess there's a few things here. Is I don't believe that we're going to need to root for Florida to lose more games.
Right.
Like, I think Florida's so bad right now that you can root for them all you want, and there's at least another loss or two in there. I want them to beat the tar out of Georgia because that'll be hilarious. And hopefully we're not looking at another situation like with Florida State a couple of years ago, where they come in undefeated and Florida's trying to ruin their season. That was actually a fun game to be at until the fake play that Napier called while they were up 12-0. Or the trick play Napier called while they were up 12-0. So I don't think it
turned out to be a fake play.
Well, maybe. Yeah. So I guess Florida needs to lose at least one more time for Billy Napier to be gone. If they end up 9-3 to end the season, Napier's still going to be there. So if you want Napier gone, they have to lose at least one more time. That's sort of the reality. I think they're going to do that and do that fairly easily with the schedule the way it sits. I think even 7-1 is less than a 1% chance overall for the rest of the year. And so I think they're going to. I don't know. One, I can't actively root against them. I just can't, which is not a healthy thing, but I can't. But yeah, I think there's a little bit of truth to that if Florida ends up 5-7, then, there's clearly a change that needs to be made because you've gone backwards. In terms of old Bass' comment about how do I overcome this unhealthy obsession, that goes back to what I said about expectations and reality. You got to dial back your expectations. And it's hard because I can't. Like, I just sit there, and I even tweeted after the game. I was like, at some point this is my fault because I keep expecting Billy Napier to come out and have his team ready, and I expect him to not make boneheaded play, not make boneheaded clock management decisions and manage his timeouts well and all this sort of stuff. My expectations are not in line with reality as it has unfolded in front of me for 4 straight years. So I sit there and I act indignant when he calls like a timeout coming off of a TV timeout, or when he calls a timeout coming off of a turnover, or when he calls a timeout on 3rd and 1 from the 1-yard line. When the clock, I want to say the clock was already stopped when they called that one, but this is a me problem. Not a Billy Napier problem. The problem because I'm not setting my expectations appropriately. So if I figure out how to do that, I'll let people know, because I've yet to be able to figure out how to set my expectations to a place where the kick in the nuts doesn't surprise me, and I haven't been able to dodge it yet. But I think, honestly, and this is the horrible part, is that the solution is apathy, right? The solution is to not care. And I think we care about this regardless. And so you're not going to overcome your unhealthy obsession with watching something that hurts you. I think what you need to do is channel the hurt into understanding that, every relationship is a risk, right? When you get married, that's a risk. Like, your wife can hurt you in a way that just some random person that you meet at a bar can't. And investing in that relationship and investing in there can hurt you, but you also get these unbelievable highs from being invested in that relationship as well. And so one day Florida will rise, and Florida will have a team that is competing for championships, and that will be fun. And, my kids are kind of front runners anyway. Most kids are. And if Florida was awesome and winning all sorts of championships, they'd be like, oh yeah, the Gators, they're awesome. And they'd wear all the gear. And, now they have to wear the gear and defend themselves, because so when it becomes good, they'll appreciate the fact that wins don't come around every year. My kid's a Dodgers fan. And I woke him up last year because he's relatively young. I woke him up last year to watch the Dodgers win the World Series. And he asked me, why'd you wake me up, Dad? I said, well, the reason I woke you up is because this doesn't happen that often. Yeah. Like, your team, like, you're going to go into a situation at some point in your life where there's like a 12 or 14 or 18-year gap where your team, the Dodgers, are sitting out there in Los Angeles just losing all the time. And you're sitting there going, why did I ever root for this team in the first place? And he'll have different issues because they're on the West Coast. He can't watch them and all this sort of stuff. But I don't want you missing the fact when they win the World Series. So that's don't overcome the unhealthy obsession. The unhealthy obsession indicates that you care. The hurt is what makes it worth it when they win the championships. And I think, the Spurrier and the Urban Meyer era is sort of, I don't want to say spoiled, but they set an expectation that Florida was going to always, like, that 9-3 was a disappointment, that 10-2 was a mild disappointment, that 11-1 was like just teetering on the edge of like being acceptable, and that national championships and SEC championships were the expectation, the norm. And honestly, that is what the expectation, the norm was for those two guys, with the little Zook interlude in between. But you look at any program, Alabama before Saban, not that great. We'll see what they are under Kalen DeBoer. Auburn, they've had a few sort of flashes in the pan, but haven't really had any sustained success over long periods of time. Tennessee was in the wilderness with coaches for years and years and years, and they're sort of we'll see. The playoff, I think, might gloss this over a little bit, but they might be in a Mike White situation right now where they've got a team, because of its scheme and because of sort of the SEC and where it is from a quarterback play perspective right now, can find its way into the playoff every year, but they're going to get spanked when they come up against a more talented team over and over and over again. So, like, every team has its challenges. So just hang in, and eventually this thing will get turned around at some point. We just don't know when, but if we knew when, it wouldn't be any fun, right? We just check out until that was coming, and I'm not willing to check out. So anyway, it's unhealthy. I agree with you. I don't know what else to say.
Let's see. At Chomp Ken sent a question in about two quarterbacks. We'll save that for next week. Gator Truth, his question maybe for next week as well. Trying to figure, we got a lot to talk about with the schedule too. We might have to just save all the other ones. Peter's question about not acquiring talent for the level of Miami, and then Clemson and Florida from Big E was asking both Clemson and Florida really showing the portal, with not much emphasis on the portal, but remaining stuck to high school recruiting. So there's some questions there. I think we will get to those next week. We'll try and save those for next week so we can get into the kind of more news of today, and we can come back around. I believe those questions still be relevant next week there. So we got some SEC annual opponents to talk about. Before we get there, well, Got to give a shout out to Gator Drywall of Duval. Gators continue to look absolutely dreadful this season and in need of a transformation. And speaking of transformations, another home renovation journey begins this week for me after staring at those hideous popcorn ceilings for far too long. I have Gator Drywall of Duval. They're finally arriving to rescue my living space. So while our football team can't seem to find their rhythm, at least my ceilings will be smooth and modern by next weekend. I'm especially excited because Brandon and his team at Gator Drywall, they bring that family-owned dedication that's been missing from so many services these days. These guys know exactly what they're doing, handling everything from drywall installation to texturing with precision and care. So while we may not be able to fix our football woes overnight, at least my home will be getting the championship level upgrade it deserves. If your house needs that kind of transformation our Gators clearly need, then call the real professionals at Gator Drywall of Duval, 904-793-2088. That's 904-793-2088, or contact them at gatordrywallofduval.com. I don't know if you listen to all the call-in show, but no, I think it was the review show Saturday night. Brandon texted me and joked. It was like, "Yeah, I'll fix the holes in your walls too that you punched." That was pretty good. We're looking forward to that right here this week. So I don't know what the studio is going to look like later this week. If I have to do some kind of surprise episode or whatever, so we'll see. But let's get to it. Chris Lowe from On 3 dropping the bomb today, a day before ESPN SEC Network is supposed to have a special on Tuesday of the SEC annual opponents for the next 4 years. And here we go. The Gators draw Georgia, of course, and then surprisingly, South Carolina and Kentucky for the annual opponents for the next 4 years. On Tuesday, SEC Network will have a special as well where we will learn the schedule for the next 4 years, and it's not going to be that hard to figure out. Whoever Florida plays next year, they will play, they'll play the 2 years after that, and it will rotate. So Florida's, the schedule will be, the next 4 year schedule will certainly be all revealed. It'll be a rotation every other year. Florida draws Georgia, South Carolina, and Kentucky. And Will, what's your initial reaction to that? Most people thought Tennessee could still stick on as an annual opponent, maybe LSU as well, since that's a little bit of a rivalry too. But Florida, with the only really heavy rival, because Florida, you look at the SEC, it's Georgia, it's Tennessee, it's LSU. Those you get SEC rivals for the most part. Auburn from back in the day as well. None of them, except for Georgia, as an annual opponent for the Gators. So every other year, going up to Columbia, going up to Lexington. Kind of a surprise here. But, I think when they look at it and they try to put fairness into it, historical rivalries into it, it makes some sense here. But it will be hard seeing no LSU, no Tennessee every year on the schedule.
I mean, just like everything, Kentucky screws it up. It's like everything in the SEC. That's really what this boils down to. Is Kentucky's rivals are Florida, Tennessee, and South Carolina. Which I'm sitting there going, I mean, the problem is there's just I went and saw a game in Lexington back in the Will Muschamp era, just because I happened to be close to the area. And there's no juice in that stadium, and Kentucky just doesn't have the resources, or they're a basketball school, right? And so maybe that's the thought process here: is put two basketball schools together in the same space. Since Florida is moving in that direction, I mean, I'm not excited about this. I think obviously the Georgia game needed to be there because that's the heated rival, right? But I have zero ill will towards South Carolina, and I have zero ill will towards Kentucky. I don't consider them rivals of Florida. And yeah, they were in the SEC East together, but they were just 2 wins on the way to winning the SEC East for most of the years when Florida was in the SEC East. So I don't get excited about this list. I think I understand why it is the way it is. And, you start looking at Tennessee and go, okay, well, they've got Alabama, Kentucky, and Vandy. Like Alabama and Vandy have to be on that list. So to sub out Florida means you'd have to find somebody else for Kentucky. So somebody was going to have to play Kentucky and be like, yay, we get to play the Wildcats. And it just so happens that Florida is the one who drew that short straw. So,
when you look at this, you do get to play every other year, so it does suck that those teams aren't on there. I guess if there is a silver lining, you won't go years without playing teams like you have been in recent SEC history. Ever since the league expanded in '92, you lost some of those games and eventually lost Florida, Auburn, and they didn't play for, it seemed like, a decade. Georgia still hadn't played at Texas A&M. A&M's been in a conference since 2012. I mean, it's ridiculous how long you would go stretches. But now with this, with 3 annual opponents, you play 9 conference opponents all together. You do at least get to face opponents every other year. I think the schedules will be pretty fair because you're playing 9 conference games for the most part. And in some ways with this, Florida does catch a probably much needed break compared to the schedule in recent years. But you do get, it won't be years that Florida goes without playing LSU or Tennessee. It will be there every other year.
I mean, sure, but it's hard to maintain a rivalry when you play every other year, right? I mean, the players for Florida and LSU don't like each other, and they play every year, and they understand that the team that wins that game has a leg up when it comes to getting to where they need to be. And it used to be that way for Tennessee. Now, Tennessee's been Florida's whipping boy now for 20 years, so maybe 25 years. And so, that one has become less of a heated rivalry just because Florida has dominated it in recent years. At the same time, those of us who experienced the 1990s hold that one with a special place in our hearts. So, look, I mean, there's going to be the problem that I see is that I don't see South Carolina or Kentucky raising to a level where they would be able to compete with Florida the same way that LSU and Tennessee have. And so that's fundamentally the problem. If I thought that those two could get to that level, like if Ole Miss was sitting in Florida's rivalry bucket, I go, we got no history with them, but I see recent evidence that suggests that with the right coach, they can get to where that is a good game every year. It's a game I want to watch. It's a game I circle on the schedule. It's a game I think about going to see with Max, my boy. And I'm not circling South Carolina or Kentucky to go watch with Max. If I'm going to one of those games, it's because the schedule and the timing and work and all that stuff sort of aligned. And we said we were going to catch a game this year, right? It's not like I'm scheduling around things to make sure that I get there for that particular game. Like maybe a Texas or a Texas A&M coming to the Swamp, or certainly a Tennessee or an LSU. I mean, I've seen LSU in the Swamp probably like 4 times, over 5 times in the last decade. I've seen Tennessee 3 or 4 times too. Like those are just games where you look at it and go, all right, I got to make my schedule match, and I got to find one that I like, one where I think it's going to be a good game, and I think it's going to be something that tells me something about the team and the quality of the team. And usually those were ones that popped up on the calendar and popped up in terms of having some sort of priority that I'd learned something about the team, that it would be fun. Like I think Florida is going to win the bulk of the games against South Carolina and Kentucky, but I can remember when I was in college there, and the Kentucky game was one where you're like, you could get free tickets for and go to that game if you didn't have the season tickets at the time. They used to make you call in to get the season tickets, dating how old I am. But you used to have to call in and sit there and just dial and dial and dial. And if you didn't get the season tickets, well, then you had to figure out how to get in the stadium. And Kentucky was sort of one of those teams where you knew going in Florida was going to win by 50, but it was the only time you got to go into the stadium, so you took advantage of it. That doesn't exist anymore with all the secondary market and all that sort of stuff. So, I mean, look, I understand why it is the way it is. I understand why it sits this way, but I'm not. I walk out of this one going, it doesn't get me excited about anything.
Yeah, and when you look at the teams that spin, you look at the big spinners, you look at the quote unquote big boys of the SEC here. It is, I think Alabama still has Auburn and Tennessee. So they got two of their big rivals. They got two big games. Oklahoma doesn't. Oklahoma only drew Texas. When you start talking about the big boys of the conference, so Oklahoma's kind of like Florida. They drew Missouri and Ole Miss, while they still draw Texas. Now, Auburn, of course, is going to have Alabama. They're going to have Georgia. So they got two of their biggest rivals to come in: Georgia, Auburn, and Florida. Tennessee only has Alabama. And they have. I know Kentucky's a rival for them, but it's not. It's not big. Like Tennessee didn't get Georgia as well. They didn't get another big boy to go along, much like Florida. Florida didn't get another big boy to go along with the schedule. Texas A&M got LSU and Texas. So, that one was there. LSU drew Texas A&M, Ole Miss, and Arkansas. That was the three that fan base thought they would get. But LSU, Alabama has become, around the same time as Florida LSU, a big game. LSU and Bama, we're not going to see that game yearly anymore. Now there were going to be some casualties to all this, but Florida LSU, Bama LSU. You're not going to see that now. So it's certainly going to be different. But like I said, every other year, so you're going to get it there. But certainly is different not seeing these big games that we're used to seeing year in and year out not happen now.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is the right time as a Florida fan for this news dump to come out because we're already so depressed about how the team is playing that I can't really get myself all up in arms about this. And in fact, like you said, having South Carolina and Kentucky on the schedule might mean that we can get to like bowl eligibility and actually like start out a season not 1-3. That'd be nice. I just, again, I'm glad Georgia's on there, I guess. I mean, know. They could have taken them off, given us like, Vanderbilt there or something. and then we would have had none of those rivals there. I'm glad that that's the one that they kept. At the same time, like, I'm not excited about it. And honestly, I mean, I'm not real excited about some of the additions that they've had to the conference. I'm an old school guy, right? Like,
yes, yeah.
I like Missouri being in the SEC is still weird. And A&M even being in the SEC, and Texas being in the SEC, and Oklahoma, like we got a bunch of Big 12 teams sitting here in the SEC, and they've screwed up our schedule and our rivalries.
Yeah. Take me back pre-2012.
Yeah. So I mean, but again, I think this is part of old man yelling at the clouds too. I
don't know if it is though. I think most people were like that though. I think people want the regionality. If you want the traditional SEC, ACC, Big East, the Pac-10, Pac-12, I mean, the regionality is certainly gone, and this is the byproduct of it.
So I think there's value in understanding that that's where the game started, but there's also value in looking at some of the other sports, right? So baseball has become incredibly regional in terms of the sports networks, in terms of the TV contracts and all that sort of stuff. And what you find is that, people who like the Phillies, for example, in Philadelphia, hate the Mets, don't really like the Yankees. That's because everybody hates the Yankees. But beyond that, sort of apathetic to the other teams that are out there. But even baseball has, I mean, it depends. It's not like a massive hate up here, right? I mean, certainly when the Braves are good, people sit there, I hate those guys. But it's not like if the Braves went off to the American League East and somebody else and Baltimore popped in, like Philly fans wouldn't go crazy. So my point is that it's a very regional sport in terms of its popularity, which means that when the Phillies are bad, the whole area just kind of checks out when it comes to the overall sport. So college football has become significantly less regional over the last few years because you've got UCLA in the Big Ten. So it's not a regional sport anymore. It's now a national sport. I think with that comes, a readjustment that needs to be made by the fans who love the sport because it's different. But I think it also sort of maybe opens up the tent to people who wouldn't have been interested before because there are whatever new rivalries or I think you can make an argument for a more national sport being better for the TV contracts, the players and all that sort of stuff. Right. I think that's why I say it's old man in the clouds though, or yelling at the clouds. Right. Is that I look back as like 2006 with the cock block as like the height of what college football can be. with all the stakes on a game that's happening in late October, early November. November. Yeah, because it was pretty late in the year, but a game that's happening in November, but not the last game of the year,
right?
But a game that's dictating like major national championship implications with a South Carolina team that had nothing to do with the national championship. And nowadays, that would be a game where the field goal goes through, and well, we're 9-2, take care of business against Florida State, and everything's fine.
Yep.
Right. And so that's the thing that ticks me off that's missing. But there's a lot of people who would make the argument, look, if Florida won that game against Miami the other day, if they'd found a way to pull that one out, the narrative around the team would be completely different, because it'd be like, look, like Lagway turned a corner in that second half and Florida was able to pull this one out. Now they've got a week to get everything right, and they still have the ability to slip up one more time the rest of the year and still make the playoff. Like the fact that you can have 3 losses and still make it changes. Like, that loss to South Florida would have been a killer back in 2006. Yeah. That would have been the end of the season. Now, look, Florida was not able to recover, but we came out of that USF game with people certainly talking about Northern Illinois and Notre Dame and all that sort of stuff, right? So it's just different. I don't know whether it's, I think most of us who loved the sport back then are going to say it was better back then. I'm sure there will be young whippersnappers who will look at us and be like, you old guys, like, how could you say that it was better back then? And, in some ways they may be right. There might be the quality of the football.
Because it was.
Well, there you go. So, I don't disagree with you, but, we're also not going back to it. So we will enjoy our South Carolina and Kentucky matchups every year.
Yeah. Well, here's what we're missing. I gotta share, because he donated some money here. JJTN52. I'm sure the TN stands for Tennessee. As a Tennessee fan, Napier should have been going after year 2, but happy he's still around. Love the show. So there we go.
This is the real.
That's what we're going to be missing. We don't get Florida, Tennessee every year now.
So this is the real problem with NIL, is that NIL came in the year before or the year after Jeremy Pruitt was giving recruits allegedly McDonald's bags with cash in them, and that's why he got let go. And now we can't sit there and figure out a way to get Billy Napier to give Florida recruits allegedly McDonald's bags with cash in them and have that be a reason to send him off. So, that's how you get a coach gone in year 2. I mean, Pruitt, he got fired before his 3rd year, right? Because of all that stuff going on.
Oh man, I forgot what year.
I mean, so I have to go back and look at it. All I know is he wore the little grandma thing with the checks, the check mark pattern that he had like pulled around his face, and that was really the beginning of the end. But look, if there was
2020, I forget. Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, it doesn't really matter, other than the fact that it's fun to make fun of Tennessee, and it's going to be a little bit less fun to make fun of Tennessee because we don't face them every year. And when they're getting pounded by Alabama in that annual rivalry, it's like that's supposed to be fun. And if you're not playing them, it's like, how much fun is it really? So, yeah, I wish we were back to 12, man. I wish we still had the SEC championship game meaning something. I wish we still had, a 4-team playoff at the most, but I mean, I'd be fine going back to the 2. But again, I'm old. So I fully embrace the fact that at 44, I am not the demographic that they're going after. And, it is what it is.
Well, I mean, to me, there is an angle to this where it gets kind of to the point of no return. I mean, it can get too big. Like I don't want to put it on there, but I remember the big NASCAR boom, and then NASCAR expanded and expanded and expanded and changed rules, changed this, changed that. NASCAR's nowhere near as big is what it used to be. Professional wrestling's the same way. Booming in the 90s. You had 2 of them, WCW, WWF. Right here, we're on Monday night recording this. 13-year-old me is watching wrestling right now. I'm not doing a podcast. I'm watching wrestling. I couldn't tell you the last time I've watched wrestling. And so, and it was on top of the world in the mid to late 90s. So there is this that I think, you get big and you expand, and all of a sudden the bubble burst.
Yeah, the question
that's not what's happening here, because college football, don't get me wrong, a lot more longevity and compared to those 2 things. But still, I mean, I think there's some happenings there that we can learn from.
Sure, but I think this is actually it's a really I need to think about this more, but I think it's actually a very interesting debate from the standpoint of if I think about when 13-year-old me was growing up, I was watching Ken Griffey Jr., Frank Thomas, and Barry Bonds in the Home Run Derby. And I can remember it being must-see TV to watch the All-Star game with all those guys because the games weren't on all over the place, right? So, like, the All-Star game is the only time you could see them. The National League didn't play the American League, like, but it was a national sport to me, at least, as a 10-year-old, 11-year-old, 12-year-old kid. And the NFL to me, I was growing up in Indianapolis. The NFL was the Colts, and the Colts were terrible. And, you know, they had Jim Harbaugh and Jack Trudeau, and they were just Jeff George. They were awful. And so the NFL didn't hold a lot of intrigue to me, right? So I think in many ways, the intrigue sort of fits whether your teams are good or not. That's the first part. Yeah. But the other part is I think Major League Baseball has moved from a national model to a regional one, because the dollars associated with those regional sports networks about 10 years ago were significantly larger than having the national contracts with ESPN and Fox and that sort of stuff. So they've moved from national to regional. I think in many ways, that's one of the reasons why baseball isn't as big, or at least isn't as big of an influence, a cultural influence, as it was 20, 25 years ago. Now, you can also, there are other reasons and all sorts of other stuff we can get into, but I do wonder whether it was a move from national to regional. Now, college football has always been a regional sport. Like, I mean, and I see this with the website. If I read an article about Georgia, I get 10% of the readership that I do if I read about Florida. Like, Florida fans care about Florida, and the only time they want me to analyze Georgia is if I'm tearing them down in reference to Florida. Like that's just sort of the way it works, right? And so that's a regional model, and it feels like they're moving more towards a national model with all of the essentially what amounts to mergers of all these different teams that are coming into the conferences. And so, you know, it might be that we end up in like a heyday of college football where, you know, you've got people in Oklahoma who care just as much about what's going on because I mean, I think in many ways we're going to end up with an AFC and an NFC, and the AFC is going to be whatever the Big Ten turns into, and the NFC is going to be whatever the SEC turns into. And if it's two 20-team leagues, say, right, like if the SEC takes in 4 more teams, and you have 2 20-team leagues and they only play each other, well, now you've got people in the South who all sort of band together to like their divisions with the people in the North and the Midwest who band together to like their divisions, and it becomes a much more national centric type sport. So, I mean, I agree with you, Dave. I don't think it's as good a product, but I do wonder whether from a popularity perspective, whether that even matters, right? I think, like, I don't like watching the Baltimore Ravens, but you know, the Ravens are relevant when it comes to the NFL right now. And so if you're interested in the sport in general, you end up watching them and are interested in what they're doing because there are national implications. So, yeah, I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
Yay, South Carolina and Kentucky. Woo.
Woo. I like his. I like this. I'm sure Florida's already made a decision though. Gators Breakdown, the swamp would go crazy if you were Mr. 2-Bits for the Texas game.
Oh man,
let's go.
I'm here for it, man.
Let's go.
Hey, I'll be down for the Florida State game. So I'll put it out there right now that if we start a campaign for Max to be Mr. 2-Bits for the Florida State game, like you want to make a kid's day, like let's put the 10-year-old in there and let him do it.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Yeah, we'll get back to some of those questions. As I said, next week. I knew we wouldn't be getting all of them. So we
got to like one.
One, and briefly hit on a couple of other ones. So I mean, we're at minute 15 right now. So yeah, it's just the way it goes. It's the way it goes. But yeah, I will be on Tuesday evening when we learn the schedule. So it's going to be some more talking points this week. And then, like I said, we got some getting the ceilings done from Gator Drywall of Duval this week. So it will be. I don't think the studio will be. If I have to do anything on the podcast, there probably will be no camera.
Hey, there we go. So, you know, it just popped up into my head that the real reason that people have given up on Billy Napier is because your moniker of there never being a dull moment does not at all describe the first half against Miami or the offense for the entire year. That's the problem. Is it's not even interesting. If you're going to lose, at least be interesting.
Little did I know the dull moments would be the actual games.
Oh, that was brutal, man. Just brutal.
It was a dull first half.
It was a dull everything but the first drive of the second half.
That's true. Man. I never really thought about it. I don't think I said it Saturday night, but I really do think that first half was probably the ugliest performance I do remember.
Well, the funny part is
I don't remember
a couple of times this year, I've gone back and looked at Skylar Moorhenweg's stats. It wasn't as bad as the other night. Put it that way.
Yeah.
So, we think about like the Will Muschamp.
Yeah. It shocked me when Cole Cubitt put it out there. I had to go look it up myself because I was so glad he put it there. I knew it was a bad performance that year, but Florida's performance in Atlanta in the SEC championship game versus Alabama in 99, 114 yards of total offense. That was a Steve Spurrier team putting up 114 yards. Now, remember earlier that year, Sean Alexander and Bama comes into the swamp and upsets Florida 40-39 in overtime. Florida got the rematch in Atlanta, lost 34-7, and put up, Will, 114 total yards, 2.6 yards of play.
Well, so there is light at the end of the tunnel on the other side, is what you're telling me.
No, because in a game, the week before.
So
the week before that, he put up 442 on FSU. There was 405 versus Georgia, 499 versus Auburn. So,
well, this is good because I thought I heard you saying that we should give Billy Napier more time. I thought that's what I heard. I think that's what I heard, Dave. I think that's what you're saying. I mean, I don't agree with you, and I think the whole fan base may come after you, but I think that's what I heard. Is that
in stream?
Billy Napier needs like 3 more. Billy Napier needs 3 more years or something. That's what I heard there, Dave.
Not at all what I was saying, but I just couldn't believe it. He put that there, and I was like, and he didn't say what game it was. He just said 99, and I was like, well, it's got to be that game. But I was like, there's no way it was that bad. Well, it was. Okay.
Well, I mean,
that's how long ago it's been, though.
Well, so until Miami wins an ACC championship, I'm not willing to admonish Steve Spurrier for what he did against an SEC championship quality opponent. And like you said, they were putting up 500 yards a game all around that one flop. I mean, that's sort of like if you judge Spurrier based on the Fiesta Bowl against Nebraska, obviously there would be some there would be some consternation there as well. It turns out that sometimes you do need to go through those growing pains to get to where you need to be. And maybe even goes back to the question we answered earlier, which is, the thing about The Last Dance when they talked about Jordan and going through the Pistons, like Jordan lost a bunch when he was coming up and when he was young and when he was building and all that stuff, but the trend was going in the right direction. And I think really when you look at this year, this trend is going in the opposite direction from where we were going at the end of last year. Lagway is going in the opposite direction from where he was going last year. And, at some point, 9-3 with a couple of losses along the way to high quality SEC opponents, not a huge deal. 1-3 with a loss to USF. Very different story.
For sure. But all right, bye week. What are you doing the bye week, Will? I mentioned all those big games, or you can go bet them at my bookie, but you don't have to watch Florida play Saturday. So
yeah, so I will probably be at a bar watching everybody else play. My kid has a baseball game a baseball tournament this weekend, about an hour and a half away from the home. So he and I are going out there alone because his brother's got some other stuff back at the house. So it's just me and him on the road. So we'll see. There will probably be pictures of him on like roller coasters at Hershey Park. While I'm sitting there with a beer in my hand watching real football games because I love doing what we do, Dave, and I enjoy every minute of it. But it's very rare that I get to sit down and watch a full college football game that doesn't involve Florida. So, you know, I guess what that means is I'm qualified to be an AP voter, is what we've learned over the last few months. But yeah, so I'm going to watch a college football game where I can actively root for a team, but not care. Like if they do something stupid, like where I can look at it and go, ha, like it happens to them too. So that'll be fun.
There we go. I'm looking forward to it. Stress-free weekend watching football. I might watch it all from the hot tub. Who knows?
Well, man, that was the image you all wanted. So,
well then, no, Willie, I'm sure I'll have plenty of ceiling dust to be cleaning up this weekend. So, like I said, the rest of the house is a mess right now because we had to like pull stuff out of the closets and all that kind of stuff. So there will be some honeydew stuff this weekend.
I am sure that Gator Drywall is a full-service operation that will not leave a mess behind when they are finished, Dave. They are a reputable company that our listeners should.
The important stuff will be covered up for sure. There's just no avoiding that stuff. I mean, it's what it is. So,
yeah, I work for a company that makes materials that go into that sort of stuff. So, yes, fully aware of some of the challenges.
Yeah, and like I said, it's mostly just about cleaning the rest of the house up because you got to clear the closet so they can get to the ceiling of the closet. There's not a lot of room in there, so the house is a mess right now.
Wow, sounds like college football and sweeping. That's not
yes, yes. There we go.
Sleep, Dave. That's what we're gonna do. Sleep.
That's true.
Like maybe that's why I'm so pissed off because like last year, at least the losses happened at noon. So, like, you could still sleep. This year, we were anticipating, like, a championship run, a playoff run. So it was going to be like, all right, all the games are at 7 or 7:30, but at least it'll be fun to write these post-game recaps and be up till 2 a.m, getting those things out there. And no, I'm writing a requiem for Billy Napier after the 4th game of the year because that's all that he's left us.
All right. Yeah. One more time, I will end with this. A big thank you. He does say, thank y'all for what y'all do. You help us get through these dark times in Gainesville. So, hey, like I said, we're all in this together. We all just discuss it, and me and Will enjoy bringing it to you guys. So it's we have fun doing it. We wish it was something better to talk about, but it's the group therapy sessions, all that good stuff here happening on Gators Breakdown. So that'll do it, everybody. That is Will Miles at Will Miles SEC and Read and Reaction. I am David Waters, host of Gators Breakdown. Find me at GatorDave_SEC. Guys and girls out there, thank you for joining us on this episode of Gators Breakdown.